Magandang araw po sa bawat isa. Welcome po dito sa ating T4T, Training for Trainers, Orientation. Ang focus po natin sa ating training is to make disciples and multiply churches. This is Pastor Judah Cantoria ng National Council of Christian Community Churches. Nice ko po kayong i-welcome dito sa ating pong training na gagawin. Nawa, patuloy tayong pagpalain ng Panginoon at gamitin niya sa paglawak ng kanyang kaharian sa pagtatanim ng mga iglesia sa iba't ibang lugar. Ngayon po ay nadako tayo sa isang parabola. Ito po yung the parable of the mustard seed. Plano po ng Diyos na tayo ay lumago at maging mabilis sa pagpapalaganap ng kanyang salita sa pamagitan po ng church planting. Yan po ang plano ng Diyos, maging mabilis at dumami ang maraming mga simbahan sa pamagitan ng ating ministry. Tingnan po natin kung ano ang sinabi niya tungkol dito. Pag-uusapan natin kung paano tayo makakasama sa kanyang disenyo ng pagpapalawak ng kanyang kaharian sa pamagitan po ng church planting. Sa pangunguna po ng ating facilitator, ating pong bubulayin ang Mark chapter 4, verse 30 to 32, ito po yung the parable of the mustard seed. Elephant reproduction versus rabbit reproduction. Some people multiply very quickly. Some churches also grow and multiply very quickly. Others are very slowly. Some animals grow and multiply very quickly. Others very slowly. Ngayon po ay pag-aaralan natin ang growth and multiplication of both rabbits and elephants. And let's compare these to our churches. We will gain some great insights pag pinag-aralan po natin ang rabbit at ang elephant. So, gusto ko pong bigyan din yung elephant type church and rabbit type church. Tingnan po natin. Elephant type church, big. Many attend, many programs, holy atmosphere. Church-like, ika nga. Members are well-dressed. Pastors wear holy robes. O laging nakabarong o nakadescending damit. There are beautiful flowers. Excellent choir. Professional preaching or sabihin nating mahusay talaga yung presentation ng message. But very, very slow to multiply. Ang tawag po dyan ay elephant-type church. Compare po sa rabbit-type church. This is very small, but multiplies fast. Napakabilis dumami. Tingnan po natin ang katotohanan tungkol sa bagay na ito. One pair of elephants and one pair of rabbits. Tingnan po natin ang kanilang comparison. Frequency of fertility. Ang elephant po, 4 times per year. Samantalang ang rabbits, practically continually, walang tigil ang kanilang fertility. Number of babies per pregnancy. Sa elephant po, 1. Sa rabbit, 7. Length of pregnancy. Sa elephant po ay 22 months. Samantalang sa rabbit ay 1 month lang. Sexual maturity. Ang elephant po ay 18 years. Compare po sa rabbit na 4 months lang. Size of family after 3 years. Ito po ay nakakagulat eh. 1 pair of elephants, sa loob ng 3 years, 3 only. Compare po sa 1 pair of rabbits, sa loob ng 3 years, nagmumultiply po sila ng 476 million. Malaking bagay kung mabilis. Elephant churches versus rabbit churches. This time po, i-compare natin itong dalawang ito sa pamagitan po ng pagbabasa ng nakasulat po dyan sa inyong notes. Pangungunahan tayo ng ating facilitator. We will ask all the men, mga kalalakihan, dahil sa mas malaki sila, sila po ang magbabasa ng elephant churches. Samantalang yung mga kababaihan, sila po kasi yung nanganganak, pabayaan po natin na sila ang magbasa ng rabbit churches. So, pangunahan po ulit tayo ng ating facilitator. Our dilemma and solution to church planting. Big need and financial problem. Ang totoo po mga kapatid, there are still more than 20,000 unchurched barangays in the Philippines. Akala natin saturated na ang Pilipinas ng simbahan. Pero sa totoo lang po, napakadami pang mga barangays at mga purok, sityo na wala pa pong mga simbahan hanggang sa mga oras na ito. So yan po ang ating malaking concern dito sa Pilipinas. Many unchurched barangays nasa mga probinsya po natin. O baka yan ay sa kabilang barangay lang ng ating pinupuntahang simbahan o doon mismo sa ating barangay. People remain responsive to the gospel but resistant to come into existing church. Dito sa Pilipinas, napakadami mga taong madaling tumanggap ng salita ng Panginoon pero napakahirap dalhin sa loob ng simbahan. Number 4, churches can be planted. Yan po ang talagang totoo. Kahit saan, pwede kang mag-plant ng church. Hindi po restricted dito sa Pilipinas mag-plant ng church. Compare sa ibang bansa, napakahigpit at mayroong matinding persecution. But many feel they don't have the needed finances in doing church planting. Yan palagi ang ating problema. Ano ngayon ang ating gagawin? Isan, meron tayong mga tao na kahandang mag-plant ng church, pero ang sinasabi lagi, walang pondo ang church. Yan ang typical response to the dilemma. Gagawin sana naming mag-plant ng church, kaya lang, wala kaming pera. Ito rin po ba ang inyong problema? Meron po tayong solusyon tungkol sa bagay na ito. Ang una po, para hindi tayo mahinder ng mga concerns na ito, ng mga problemang ito sa tingin natin, mag-plant sa malapit. Kung mas malapit, mas matipid, there are probably plenty of unchurched barangays right within your own town. Mas matipid yan kaysa humayo kayo sa isang napakalayong probinsya na kailangan nyo pang sumakay ng bus or sumakay ng barko o mag-eroplano at magagastos tayo ng libu-libong pera. So, mag-plant na lang sa kabilang church. Ito na pong uso ngayon. I-saturate natin ang buong area natin bago tayo magpakalayo-layo para mas matipid. Many have had great success by planting several rabbit churches, even within the same subdivision. Super tipid yan. And there are many additional advantages to that strategy. So, sa ating po mga simbahan ngayon, yan ang binibigyan natin ng diin. bago tayo magpakalayo-layo, ang unahin natin ay ang mga barangay na nasa kapaligiran lang po natin na hindi pa nagkakaroon ng mga simbahan. Kung minsan, akala ng iba, kung mas malayo, mas spiritual. Hindi po totoo yun. Kalokohan po yun. Ang totoo po, mas malapit tayo magpa-plant ng church, mas malapit yung barangay na tatargetin natin, mas marami pong advantages at ito po ang pinaka matipid na paraan ng pagpa-plant ng church. Pangalawa po, use a free, inexpensive venues. Ang nasa isip kasi natin palagi, pagka nag-plant tayo ng church, mangangailangan ng lote at mangangailangan ng building. Malihong mindset yon. Pwede po tayong gumamit ng mga libre or inexpensive na mga venues para sa ating mga gatherings. Kagaya po ng classroom, barangay hall, driveway, sala at iba pa, or under the mango tree or sa bangka. Bangka, pwede po yan. Meron po akong alam na ginagamit ang bangka para gawing church kasi doon sa lugar nila, mahirap maghanap ng pwesto. Naging Christian yung may-ari ng isang malaking bangka na ginagamit pag gabi para sila ay mamalakayan ng isda. Pero sa araw po, libre yung bangka, napakalaki ng bangka. So ang gagawin po nila, pag Sunday morning, kukunin po nila yung karatula ng church, ilalagay doon, isasabit doon sa harapan ng bangka. At lahat ng miyembro ay darating on time. Ang maganda ho doon, bawal ang malate. Kasi pag nakapasok na lahat ng miyembro sa bangka, para malibre po sila ng electric fan, dadalhin yung bangka sa bandang gitna ng dagat. At doon po sila magkakaroon ng worship service. Ang isa pa hong advantage ng floating church, wala hong nakakaligtas sa offering. Di ba? Pag tayo pagka-offering time, mga tao po ay natututong mag-excuse ng sarili nila by yung iba pupunta sa siyang, pupunta sa labas, kunyari may kakausapin, pero umiiwas lang sa offering. Doon sa floating church, wala akong ligtas lahat. At ang maganda pa po doon, lahat darating on time at uuwi on time. Kasi hindi ka pwedeng umuwi ahead of time dahil lalangoy ka pagka ganun ang iyong ginawa. So, be creative enough to look for free or inexpensive venues para sa ating gathering. Pangatlo po, use your lay people. In this way, we can plant churches without providing a salary or sweldo for a full-time church planter. Use our ordinary members. Challenge them and provide them simple tools. This is the untapped resource of our churches. Yan po ang totoo. Napakadami yan. Napakadaming mga taong qualified, very much qualified sa ating mga iglesia na hindi po natin tinatap na pwede silang maging church planters at pwede silang maghawak ng isang iglesia. So in this way, pag tinap po natin yan, we can mobilize our people, our church will be equipped and plant churches without providing a salary for a full-time worker. Sa ating pong mga iglesia, danas na po natin yan. Ang dami pong mga tinatawag natin na tent makers. Sila po yung mga full-time sa kanilang hanap buhay. Yung iba negosyante, yung iba yung mga professional, pero at the same time, sila po ay may mga hawak na iglesia o yung iba sa kanila ay mga church planters. Pakinggan po natin yung sinabi ng isang matalinong tao. Sabi dito, every revival recorded in church history in which the fruit remain include massive church planting led by lay people. Yan po ang sinabi po ni Dr. Paul Pearson. Professor po ito ng church history sa Fuller Theological Seminary. So, we need to equip and use our lay people. Kaya nga ba ng mga lay people? Yan ang isang malaking tanong. Ang sagot po dyan ay yes, kayang-kaya ng mga lay people. At dito po papasok ang T4T. T4T will provide training. We will equip you and provide tools empowering you to train your members. Ito po ang sistema at ito ang pamamaraan ng T4T. Pangalawa, the pastor does not have to do it all alone. Diba ang kinasanayan po natin, lahat ay ginagawa ni pastor. This time, i-equip po natin ang buong membership. Ang lahat ng ating mga members ay kaagapay, katulong ng pastor sa pagpapalawak ng gawain ng Panginoon at sa pagtatanim ng mga iglesia. Number 3, the pastor can serve as a coach. Ito po ang magiging role ng pastor. With a small time investment, he can train and equip his lay people for effective ministry and plant daughter churches. Kadalasan po, yung mga pastor ay napaka-busy. Abalang-abala na yan. Kaya kaunti na lang ang panahon niya para mag-plant ng church. Pero kung mamumultiply niya ang kanyang sarili by providing encouragement at mobilizing his members at tatayo siya bilang coach, mas malawak at mas marami ang magagawa para sa kaharian ng Panginoon. Number 4, the most effective church growth and church planting strategy available today, ito po yung T4T o Training for Trainers. At yan po ang ating bibigyan ng diin dito sa ating gagawing training. So, lipas na po yung tinatawag nating super pastor. The pastor does not have to do it all. Huwag na po nating pahirapan si pastor para lalo pang lumawak ang kaharian ng Panginoon. So dahil po dyan, mga kapatid, kahit kaunti lang ang pera, ganoon, o kahit walang pera, pwede pa rin tayo makapag-plant ng church doon sa malapit at gagamitin po natin ang mga lay people natin para mag-expand ang kaharian ng Panginoon. So, this time po, sa panguna again ng ating facilitator, gagawa po tayo ng role play. At ating pong i-role play yung gusto ko sanang mag-plant ng church, kaya lang wala akong pera. So, how would you answer this? So, pangunahan po tayo ng ating facilitator. What is T4T? Yan ang tanong ng marami sa atin at yan po ang ating sasagutin dito sa ating orientation na ginagawa. We have been talking a lot about T4T. What exactly is T4T? Let's see. T4T is a set of principles that weaves together evangelism training, discipleship, leadership development, including development of new pastors for new churches. This is all done in the context of an actual church planting and church multiplication. Kaya po very unique ang T4T training kasi nandoon na po lahat. Napakatindi ng pamamaraan ito para lumawak at lumago ang gawain ng ating Panginoon. So, isa-isahin po natin. T4T is a set of principles that weaves together. Una, evangelism. Yan. Ang focus po nito ay unbelievers. Hindi ho nakapokus ang church planting sa mga dati ng mananampalataya na igagather lang. Kundi ang inuuna talaga, ang priority ay mga unbelievers. So evangelism training, nagtuturo tayo ng pinakasimpleng paraan ng evangelism. Mayroon tayong pattern na kaya pong sundan ng bawat isa, napakasimple pong gawin. At nakafocus din po ito sa discipleship. From the very start, ito po yung pinaka-heart ng T4T. Maabot yung sinasabi ng Panginoon, yung command ng Panginoon sa Great Commission to make disciples. Yan ang ating sinasadya dito, to make disciples. from unbelievers, magiging alagad o tagasunod ng Panginoon. At ang focus din po natin, ang DNA natin na binibigyan ng din po dito ay leadership development. Sa umpisa pa lang, talagang intentional na yung mga bagong mananampalataya ay magiging mga leaders at sila po ay magiging pwede pong mag-lead ng Bible study agad-agad at magamit ng Panginoon sa kanyang kaharian. Number 5, including development of new pastors for new churches. Ito ang pinakamahirap Marami pong gawain pero kulang ang manggagawa. Pero dito po sa ating gagawing training, dito sa T4T, kasama po dyan, intentional, ang pagdidevelop ng mga bagong pastor na pwedeng mga siwa at manguna sa mga bagong churches na ating maipaplan. This is all done in the context of actual church planting and church multiplication. Napakaganda po ng T4T. So, what can you say? Paunahan po ulit tayo ng ating facilitator. Ito po ang resulta ng isang church planter na ginamit po ang T4T. So, tingnan po natin. Year 1, ito po yung kanyang naging bunga. 53,430 baptism. At sa loob lang ng isang taon, nakapag-plant po siya ng 3,535 churches. Ang tindi po nito. Year number 5, ang baptism niya ay 153,625 at ang naiplant na church ay 15,193. Tingnan na lang po natin yung first 9 to 10 years. Sabi niya, ang sabi po dito sa report, meron pong 206 baptism, 206,204, at ang naiplant na church ay 18,368. So, tingnan po natin ang total sa loob ng 10 taon. Ang kanya pong naabot, ang baptism po ay 1,738,143. Samantalang ang naiplant pong church ay 158,993. Ito po yung mga house churches. At mabilis na lumaganap ang salita ng Panginoon using T4T. So, Philippine Challenge has developed tools applying the principles of T4T here in the Philippines. Kasi nagsimula po ito sa China, pero sinubukan pong gawin dito sa Pilipinas at kinuha po yung konteksto ng mga Pilipino at ito po ay naging very effective po dito. So, tingnan po natin yung results dito sa Pilipinas. Our results so far in the Philippines do not compare to the results in China, but results have been very strong. 4 times the fruit from previous training. Naranasan po namin yan kasi matagal na po tayo nagtuturo ng church planting. Ito pong result nitong T4T ay matindi. Mas matindi kaysa yung mga una nating training na ginawa. Bago po kasi ito tinuro, meron po munang field test na ginawa. To begin, one church planter field tested the T4T materials in Taytay, Rizal. Sa Taytay po ito ginawa, Barangay Santa Ana. He had 9 new groups with 100 new believers in just 3 months. 48 were baptized. All of this was done only on Sundays, maghapon and Wednesday nights lang. So, kilala po natin ang gumawa ng field test na ito at yan ang naging resulta. Number 2, yung first pastor's training. T4T was working. The training was then given to 20 pastors of typical churches of 60 members each. As a result of the training, each church grew on the average by 131%. Each church had an average of 15 new groups of unbelievers with an average total of 76 new believers in small groups. Kaya makikita po natin, napakaganda ng resulta nito. Number 3, tignan po natin yung multiplication. Now, we have many T4T trainings going on simultaneously in many provinces. Results are usually excellent. Basahin ko lang po ang ilan sa mga naging very successful ang kanilang endeavor po dito. Si Pastor Nelson Franny reports a church in Cavite whose worship attendance doubled after the T4T training. Si Pastor Rene Insyong in Pasig planted 15 house churches in a little over 1 year. Si Pastor Eric ng Montalban planted 22 house churches in a little over a year. Si Pastor Lino Laportesa ng Santa Rosa saw his church grow from 30 to 120 in less than a year. Many churches have started second worship services to accommodate the many new members. And there are many more reports. At dito po sa atin mismo sa NCCC, makita po natin ang matinding result nito. Napakadaming mga simbahan na naiplan using T4T. So, what makes T4T so powerful? Bakit napaka-powerful nitong T4T na ito? So, tingnan po natin kung bakit napakaganda ng resulta ng pag-a-apply po ng pag-implement ng T4T. Number 1, very effective materials for OBS or Outreach Bible Study. Ito po ay tungkol sa mga Bible stories, highly interactive, fun, many insights discovered, most come quickly to assurance of salvation. Ito po ang kaibahan nito. Nagpo-focus tayo sa mga Bible stories at very interactive ang ating ginagawang pagtuturo. At masigla at sila mismo ang nakaka-discover, yung mga tao mismo ang nakaka-discover ng truth sa banal na kasulatan at nakafocus po tayo sa salvation. Therefore, ang ating focus talaga dito ay unbelievers. Number 2, very simple materials for OBS. Ito ang isang kagandahan po nitong T4T. Simple ang mga OBS materials. So simple that new believers can immediately lead OBSs with their family, neighbors, and their friends. Kahit bagong mananampalataya, kayang-kaya niyang ituro ang simpleng paraan o lesson ng T4T. New believers are more ready to do this than church members. Yan po ang totoo. Yung mga bagong mananampalataya, mas matitindi pa, masanda pa na gawin ito kumpara doon sa mga matatagal na sa church. Akala kasi natin ang Bible study leading ay para lang sa mga workers at mga pastor. Hindi po totoo yan. Kahit mga bagong mananampalataya nga, kayang gawin na magturo ng OBS using T4T materials dahil ito ay napakasimple. So, groups rapidly multiply. So, pagka ganito po ang nangyari, mas lalong dadami ang mga Bible study at maraming opportunity na makakapag-plan po tayo ng maraming mga simbahan. Number 3, unique components. There are some unique and powerful components in the OBSS. These components move the results to beyond the ordinary. Meron po kasing unique and powerful na component ang Outreach Bible Study ng T4T. Kaya intentional, talagang magugulat ka sa resulta nito. At hindi po natin i-discuss yan. We will cover this in detail in a few weeks doon sa ating susunod na mga trainings. Pero tanda po natin, very powerful ang mga components na yan, very unique. At yan po ay intentional sa paglawak at pag-multiply in all levels. Number 4, an effective process for making disciples. The content of the T4T OBSs are nothing new. We will use very familiar topics. Yun po nakakagulat. Wala namang bago, pero very powerful ito. we will use very familiar topics dito po sa ating mga lessons. You will learn a new process. You will be able to take familiar topics and learn to use a process that will enable you to start with unbelievers and make disciples. We need this. Dapat maging ready po tayo na gawin ang process na ito. Number 5, emphasis on persons of peace. Through the person of peace, your contacts in new believers will be multiplied. Yan po ang totoo. How can we find person of peace? What should we do when we meet them? We will learn how. Doon po sa ating mga susunod na pag-aaral. Number 6, merong consistent multiplication. The new contacts in OBSS are viewed as trainers. Trainers of leaders of new OBSS. This is T4T, training for trainers. 2 Timothy 2:2 actually happens among unbelievers. Buhay na buhay po talaga dito ang 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2. So ngayon po ay magkakaroon tayo ng multiplication demo. Pangungunahan po tayo ng ating pong facilitator para gawin po ang multiplication demo na ito. Number 7, all based on relationships. We will maximize relationships of church members. As we meet new contacts, we will also maximize their relationship. Dito po sa Pilipinas, very relational ang mga tao, very friendly. At bago tayo makapag-share, kailangan mag-establish muna tayo ng rapport doon sa ating mga contacts, sa mga prospect natin. So dito po sa T4T, ang base po ng ating gagawing ministry is based on relationship. And number 8, materialize are contextualized for the Philippines. Bagamat ito po ay nagmula sa China, isang missionarying Chinese from the US, ang pinabalik ng Panginoon sa China at ginawa niya po ito, naging very successful. Pero dito po sa Pilipinas, sinubukan ng umpisa, hindi ho nag-materialize hanggat sa ito po ay kinontextualize, inadapt ng ayon sa konteksto ng Pilipinas. Doon lang po naging very effective ang ating training o ang T4T dito sa Pilipinas. So makaasa po kayo, lahat ng materials natin gagamitin dito ay in Philippine context. Ginawa na rin po natin ito sa Thailand, kinontextualize din po doon para maging effective. So yun po ang kaibahan ng T4T. So what you will learn in the T4T training? Yan po ang tanong. Kung kayo po ay papasok dito sa T4T training, kung inyong church ay mag-i-involve dito, ano ang inyong matututunan? Una po, you will learn how to find the persons of peace. Pangalawa, you will learn how to use the simple T4T Bible study guides. Hindi lamang po yan hard copy, kundi meron na po tayong ginawang lessons na pa-video. And then, next ay, we will learn how to transition OBS into fully functioning churches. Ito po yung kaibahan ng T4T. Dahil po doon sa ating intentional materials, sadya na ang lahat ng ito ay patungo sa pagbuo ng mga simbahan. So matututunan po natin dito yan. Yet, this is very exciting. Yung transition from outreach Bible study to a fully functioning biblical church. And then, isa pa po natin, we will learn how to develop leaders from the harvest to lead new churches. So, hindi tayo problema sa mga manggagawa dahil ang intentional program ng T4T ay from the harvest nalagyan ng tamang DNA, i-disciple hanggang maging isang ganap na alagad ng Panginoon, maging leader ng OBS, and later on, maging leader ng isang bagong iglesia. So, what is your reaction tungkol po sa bagay na ito? Pangunahan ulit tayo ng ating facilitator sa ating interaction. Overview of T4T Bible Study Materials. What materials will we use in T4T? Tingnan po natin kung ano-ano yan. You will be trained to lead outreach Bible studies covering these topics. You will then train your members to also use these OBS's topics with their new contacts. So T4T is more than just covering Bible studies. It is a process that mobilizes your members to make disciples. Ulitin ko po yun. It is a process that mobilizes your members to make disciples. Kasi tinawag tayo ng Panginoon to make disciples. So, tingnan po natin ang overview ng ating pong OBS materials. Ang phase 1 po natin is about salvation. Ang phase 2 ay urgent discipleship. Ang phase 3 ay church formation. At ang phase 4 ay long-term discipleship. So, kompleto po tayo ng materials para magamit sa pagtatanim ng mga simbahan. So, getting OBS contacts into church. Kulang kung OBS lang. We must obey the command of Jesus to make disciples. Disciples are part of a church. To help our new believers in OBS become part of a church, we have 3 options. Una po, bring new believers from OBS to your mother church. Yun ang usual po nating ginagawa. Pero kadalasan, hindi effective po ito kasi minsan hindi nagpapatuloy yung mga bagong mananampalataya. Pangalawa, group OBS together to form a new church, especially in your adopted barangay. Ito po, okay po ito. Minsan nag-work po ito na pagsama-samahin yung mga Bible studies po natin. Pero meron din po mga disadvantages yan. Pero pwede rin po, pwede rin. Number 3, transition OBS to become a fully functioning church. Ito ang pinaka-the best, yung number 3. Na yung ating mga OBS, lahat ng ating mga outreach Bible studies ay magiging isang ganap, functioning biblical churches. Yan po ang sadya talaga natin dito sa T4T. Ang ating mga OBS ay maging isang ganap na simbahan. So the T4T process, make disciples. Through T4T, we will open many outreach Bible studies. God will give us lots of new believers. Yan po talaga ang desire ng Panginoon. Ang biyayaan tayo ng maraming mga mananampalataya na ma-harvest po natin through evangelism at through outreach Bible study. What will we do with these new believers? Ito ang magandang tanong. And another thing is, what is the plan for long-term follow-up? Let's see kung ano po ang ating gagawin. Some new believers can be brought into the mother church. Kagaya po ng sinabi ko, pwede pong dalhin sa simbahan na existing yung mga bagong mananampalataya. Pero, kagaya po ng sinabi ko kanina, hindi minsan nagiging matagumpay ang ganitong sitwasyon. Kasi pagdating sa church ng mga bagong mananampalataya, iba po ang kultura sa loob ng church at maninibago po sila. Usually, iba po ay hindi nakakapagpatuloy. So, ang the best po, we will need to form new churches to retain the new believers and make disciples. Ito po ang pinaka-the best na gawin, bumuo ng mga bagong simbahan. Ito po yung tinatawag nating house churches na pwede pong gawin doon sa bahay mismo ng ating mga bagong mananampalataya. So the T4T OBS guides will guide delegates through this whole process. Ito po ang maganda sa T4T. Tutulungan tayo sa proseso po nito. So, reviewin po natin ito sa pamagitan po uli ng ating pong facilitator. So, T4T provides specific equipping to plant churches in adopted barangays. Meron na tayong mga napiling barangay, ang T4T po ang magpo-provide kung paano natin maaabot at matatamnan ng church ang barangay na yan. So, we will lay the foundation in our month number 1 and 3 trainings. Then we will apply this specifically to adopted barangays starting in month number 4. Kaya tuloy-tuloy po, i-guide po namin kayo hanggang sa mabuo natin ang church doon sa ating target na barangay. Transfer of training received. Most churches that attend T4T training see excellent results, but not all. Hindi ho lahat. Meron mga umaten pero wala hong resulta. What makes the difference to bear much fruit? Ano kaya ang dahilan? Bakit yung iba matagumpay, bakit yung iba ay hindi? Here are few important factors. Number 1, select your delegates. Piliing mabuti kung sino yung pa-attendin dito sa training. The pastor of each participating church must attend all trainings and apply what is learned. Gusto ko pong bigyan ng diin po ito, hindi lang basta a-attend sa lahat ng training, bawal umabsent po. At pag nag-commit tayo na a-attend, talagang a-attendan po natin lahat ng training. At higit sa lahat, i-apply po natin kung ano yung matututunan po natin doon sa training. Bawal po ang tamad dito sa T4T. Nasanay po kasi marami na a-attend lang ng seminar, pagkatapos maka-attend ng seminar, lalagay sa table yung kanilang books or materials na dala-dala, and then kalimutan na ang lahat. Dito po sa T4T, hindi ganon. Pagka tayo ay nag-train, tuloy-tuloy ang ating implementation. This pastor will choose 2 key lay leaders from his church to attend with him. Napaka-importante po nito. Dahil ang role ng pastor at ng lay leader ay both are essential. If the pastor is not able to attend or to continue in church planting network, the lay people alone will not be allowed to continue in the training. Yan po ang totoo. Kaya dapat yung pastor at lay leader magkasama talaga. If the lay leaders are not able to continue in church planting network, the pastor alone will not be allowed to continue in the training. Hindi po natin pinapayagan na pastor lang o kaya yung lay leader lang ang a-attend sa training. Together, the pastor and key lay leaders make a strong team. Both are essential. So malalaman po natin ang dahilan niyan kasi sa ating, as we go along do sa ating training, matindi ang gagampan ng role ng pastor at ng lay leader. Yung lay leader ang magtuturo sa local church training habang kino-coach ni pastor, pero sila po ang mauunang mag-implement ng kanilang natutunan sa T4T. So, additional members sa mga delegates, you may choose up to 3 additional church member to attend our training or seminar. This is optional. Mas marami, mas masaya, mas maganda. Hindi po natin lilimitahan yan. Number 2, delegates apply the training. Your 3 delegates from your church will share the gospel with unbelievers and make disciples. They will be guided in doing this step by step. All of our previous delegates have been successful in starting new discipleship groups o disciple group or OBSS. Kaya napaka-importante po na mag-apply o mag-implement yung mga delegates na a-attend. Number 3, then train your church members. After, itong sikreto po ng multiplication, after your 3 delegates personally make disciples, they can train your church members to do the same. Meron na silang authority. Meron na silang magigain na nila yung respect ng kanilang mga tuturuan dahil sila po mismo ang nag-apply personally ng kanilang natutunan. So, number 4, be an example. Before training church members, it's essential that the pastor and the 2 key lay leaders provide an example in making disciples. Don't teach your members without applying first. Bawal magturo hanggat hindi tayo nag-i-implement personally ng ating ituturo. So, pangunahan ulit tayo ng ating facilitator para i-meditate ang mga scriptures na ating pong ipa-flash sa ating screen at meron din kayong kopya niyan sa inyong notes. Number 5, produce disciple makers. Our objective is to train and mobilize your members to start new outreach Bible studies, then follow up to help new believers grow. You will be given all the materials and we will be guided how to use all these materials. So, magpuproduce talaga tayo ng mga hindi lang disciples, kundi disciple makers. Yan ang sadya natin dito sa T4T. Number 6, mobilize lay people as trainers in your church. We highly recommend that you use lay people to lead the trainings in your church rather than the pastor. Lay people are easier to imitate than pastors. Yan po ang totoo. This will lead to greater mobilization. Aalalayan sila ni pastor. Each church will identify key lay leaders who will be the main lay people to lead the trainings. So, mas maganda po na yung pastor ang magpo-coach at mag-guide, mag-encourage doon sa lay leader kaysa yung pastor ang magturo. Dapat po ang mag-lead ng training sa local church ay ang lay leaders para madali po silang mag-encourage sa mga tao to do the same. Number 7, schedule. We will meet once per month for 10 months. So, ang training ng T4T ay monthly. Sa loob po ng 10 buwan, magkikita-kita po tayo. Number 8, mobilize coaches. You can also mobilize several members to coach a group of your members as they become disciple makers. We will provide training for these coaches. This will be a separate one-day training. So, meron po tayong extrang araw training para sa lahat ng mga coaches ng ating mga members. Number 8, what to expect? During the first 2 months, fairly good results as your members share their faith. From the 3rd month on, very exciting results as your members begin outreach Bible studies. So yan po ang ating inaasahan na before the end of month number 10, meron na po tayong mga churches na naiplan. Number 10, implement. The training will be very practical. Everything covered must be applied to make disciples. This is not just a seminar to attend. Hindi po ito kagaya ng mga traditional seminar. We will exactly make disciples. So, hindi pwede ang salingkit dito. Pag tayo nag-decide na sumama dito, kinakailangan handa po tayo na mag-implement ng lahat ng ating matututunan po dito. Number 11, receive accountability. To help keep you and your church on track, we will provide accountability for implementation. At our trainings each month, This will be a big help to you, helping to assure that your church reaches its full potential to make disciples and multiply churches. Ito po ang ating sadya dito. Tayo ay makakatanggap ng accountability kasi sabay-sabay tayong magpa-plant ng church and every month magkikita-kita tayo for accountability. So napakaganda po na matutunan po natin ang mga bagay na ito at transfer natin yung ating training na natutunan para magkaroon tayo ng mga disciple makers na bunga. Summarize po natin to. Pangunahan po tayo ng ating facilitator once again. Make disciples. Ito po yung pinakapuso nitong ating training dito sa T4T sapagkat yan ang atas sa atin ng Panginoon to go and make disciples. So, most churches think they are making disciples but they actually fall far short. Paano kaya nangyari ito? Tingnan po natin. The command of Jesus is clear, very, very clear. Go! Make disciples. Yun po sa Matthew chapter 28, verse 19. Making disciples is more than just sharing the gospel and leading people to Christ. We must follow up well with our new believers, helping them to become fully devoted followers of Christ as part of a local church. Yun po yung kompleto. Hindi lang tayo mag-evangelize kasi ang result nito ay half-baked converts lang. Tumanggap lang sa Panginoon, then after that, wala nang follow-up na nangyari. Ang kailangan po, doon sa mga na-evangelize natin, maging isa silang tunay na tagasunod at alagad ng ating Panginoong Kristo. So, forming existing church members into discipleship groups, helping current church members to grow is only a part of our target for making disciples. We must also target unbelievers. And then, most churches do a lot to share the gospel. Masisipag mag-share ng gospel. Some also have many discipleship groups for current members, pero kulang na kulang pa rin. Ito po ang kompleto. Babasahin ko po sa inyo ang kompletong make disciples. To make disciples, we must lead unbelievers to assurance of salvation, helping them to become obedient followers of Christ, committed to a local church. These new disciples will also share the gospel and make disciple. So, yan po yung kompleto. So, yan ang atas sa atin ng Panginoon to make disciples. So, one part at a time, tingnan po natin ang kahulugan po dito. Una, start with unbelievers. So to make disciples, we must lead unbelievers to assurance of salvation. Lead unbelievers. So ang una nating target po sa disciple making o sa make disciples is start with unbelievers. We must include unbelievers, not just church members. Pangalawa, gain assurance of salvation. Sabi doon, lead unbelievers to assurance of salvation. We want to see more than just praying the sinner's prayer. We want to see more than professions of faith. We want to see new believers that have assurance of their salvation, confidence. Many church members do not have this assurance. Let's make this same mistake. Let's not make the same mistake, I should say. We must lead unbelievers to assurance of salvation. So, dapat po magkaroon ng assurance of salvation yung mga bagong mananampalataya. And then number next ay obedient. Helping them to become obedient followers of Christ. Obedience is essential. Doon po sa Matthew chapter 28, verse 20. We will include application in every Bible study and follow up for accountability to obey. Next po ay include church. Committed to a local church. Sabi doon, lead unbelievers to assurance of salvation, helping them to become obedient followers of Christ, committed to a local church. Ang isa pong disciple ng Panginoon ay committed to a local church. Committed to church is part of teaching them to obey. Sa Matthew 28:20, new believers who are not part of a church are not yet disciples. So yun po ang nakakalungkot na katotohanan. Kung mga bagong mananampalataya na hindi po kabilang sa isang iglesia, ay hindi pa po sila mga tunay na alagad ng Panginoon o tagasunod ng Panginoong Jesucristo. Next po ay reproducing. These new disciples will also share the gospel and make disciples. Reproduction is essential. Again, this is part of teaching them to obey. Ayon sa Matthew 28, verse 20. So, what does it mean to make disciples? Reviewin po natin sa pangunguna po ng ating facilitator. Common hindrances to making disciples. Number one, don't know how. Many church members don't know how to share the gospel. Ibang tatanda na sa church, hindi alam kung paano mag-share ng salita ng Panginoon. Hindi kasi naturuan sa umpisa pa lang. Number two, don't know who. Many church members don't know who to share with. Si karamihan ng mga kaibigan nila ay mga mananampalataya na, iilan na lang yung kanilang kaibigang hindi mananampalataya, kaya hindi nila alam kung sino si share nila ng gospel. Number three, lack follow-up. Many church members don't know how to follow up on new believers, helping them to become a fully devoted followers of Christ. Kaya hindi nagpa-follow up dahil hindi nila alam kung ano ang gagawin. Number four, distracted. Some churches are distracted by many other activities and have lost focus on our primary task of making disciples. So, marami po tayong mga activities sa church. Kadalasan, doon tayo nakatutok at nakakalimutan po natin yung pagtutok doon sa making disciples. Kaya, hindi natin magawa. Number five, maintenance mode. Some churches merely maintain normal activities and lack vision to intentionally make disciples. Kung ano na nakasanayan, yun na, tuloy-tuloy na lang yun at ayaw niya na mag-focus sa making disciples. Number six, no system. Some churches lack an overall effective plan that focuses on mobilizing their members to make disciples. Wala talagang sistema. Number seven, lack effective training. Even though some churches have lots of training, it sometimes still doesn't result in their members making disciples. Maraming mga trainings na nagaganap sa maraming mga simbahan, pero hindi po ito nagre-resulta sa disciple making. Nakakalungkot. Number eight, leaders do not provide an example. Yan, isa pa. Some pastors and church leaders do a good job for preaching, leading worship, leading the church board, and leading the church in many other ways. But few provide a good example of making disciples. Most members will follow these examples of no disciple making. Kung anong puso ng pastor at ng leader, yun ang susundin. Transference of spirit, ika nga. Kung hindi mahilig mag-plant ng church yung pastor, hindi rin mahilig mag-plant ng church yung mga miyembro. Kung hindi mahilig mag-make disciples yung pastor, ganon din ang mangyayari sa mga miyembro. Kaya nakakalungkot na marami po ang hindi gumagawa niya. Number 9, Lack of vision. Some churches do not effectively impart the vision to make disciples to their members. Ito ang pinaka-nakakalungkot na katotohanan sa mga churches natin ngayon. Lack of vision to do church planting. Now, to overcome the obstacles, which of these possible hindrances would you most like to overcome in your church? T4T can help your church to overcome all of these hindrances. So, what you will receive from T4T? By applying the training, your members will use a very simple method of sharing the gospel, especially with people they know. Yun ang una. Number 2, use a very simple but powerful series of outreach Bible study guides with their new believers all the way through long-term discipleship. Ngayon, pinaganda pa po natin kasi available na po yung OBS materials in video. Number 3, develop their outreach Bible studies into fully functioning churches. Ito ang very exciting dito po sa T4T, yung transition from outreach Bible studies into a fully functioning church. Materials, Bible study guides for your members to use to make disciples, teaching guides to use in your local church to train your members, complete with PowerPoints, hard copies and CDs of all materials. At ngayon po, pa-video na, meron po tayong video materials. Training for you. Seminar participants will be equipped to implement a simple yet comprehensive process in your church to transform your members into intentional disciple makers. Yan po ang gusto po nating mangyari, to equip your members to become disciple makers. Guidance, month by month, you will be guided through this process. Interaction with fellow implementers and the network facilitators will be a huge help to you along the way. You will receive accountability to help you stay on track with persistence, keeping focus on making disciples. In this case na we're using video, pwede po kami magkaroon ng training dyan po sa inyong lugar. At of course, i-guide pa rin po tayo ng ating facilitator using this video. So the main objective of our training, to equip you to transform your church members into disciple makers. Ito talaga ang pinakasadya ng ating training, ang gawing disciple makers ang lahat ng inyo pong mga members. So this time, pangunahan po ulit tayo ng ating facilitator para sa ating pong interaction. Vision casting for making disciples. What if those of you at today's orientation become very excited to make disciples, but none of your church members share your enthusiasm? What will happen? Na-excite ka. Gustong-gusto mo na sumama dito sa training na ito. Pero pagdating mo sa inyong church, yung mga miyembro hindi handa, ano ang mangyayari kaya? Ito pa ang solution. Cast vision. Pwede po nating i-impart yung vision sa ating mga members. So, ang Philippines Vision 120 by 2020, pwede pong gamitin yan to challenge our people. National church leaders have together set the goal to establish 120,000 churches in the Philippines by the year 2020. Currently, we have about more than 70 to 80,000 churches at the moment. Your church can contribute to the achievement of this great goal. To prepare your church to make its contribution, we must cast the vision for making disciples and church planting. So pwede po natin gamitin yung vision, Philippine Vision 120 by 2020. At ganoon din ang ating mga goal bilang organization. We can use all those para po i-challenge, i-cast yung vision sa ating mga members. So, pag-aralan po natin, ano yung mga venues for vision casting? Pwede po yan sa Sunday worship service. All part of the worship service, pwede po natin gawing vision casting to do church planting. Kung may cell group kayo, pwedeng gawin sa cell group. Pwedeng gawin sa leaders meeting. Pwedeng gawin sa prayer meeting, revival meeting, Facebook at iba pang mga venues na pwede pong pagkagamitan. Ngayon, ano naman po yung mga topics na pwedeng i-cover in preaching or teaching? Pwede niyo po bang i-discuss sa pangunguna po ng ating facilitator? Let's do this. Launching po ng inyong pong discipleship training or yung pong inyong gagawing church planting program sa inyong church. Announce the starting date of your launch many times. Have a countdown until the starting date. Build anticipation. Ito po ay makakagain ng momentum at magkakaroon ng matinding desire na makabahagi ang bawat isa sa ating pong gagawin. So, gawin po natin exciting ito. Training for your members to grasp. Make the objective very clear. Make disciples. Yun talaga ang pinaka-main objective natin. Also, make it very clear that all members will be trained to make disciples and help to plant new churches. Yun talaga ang sadya natin doon sa vision casting, i-develop ang heart o sa heart ng mga members natin ang passion to make disciples and do church planting. To impart vision, the pastor is the key. Churches often develop a heart like that of their pastor. Kaya talagang malaki ang role na ginagampanan ng pastor. Kayo po ang pinaka-key person para ma-achieve natin yung gusto nating maabot ang maging disciple makers ang ating mga miyembro. Now, groupings po ulit tayo para sa ating action plan. Balik po tayo sa ating facilitator na mangunguna po dito. Church goal to make disciples. Why is it important to set a goal? Napakahalaga po na meron tayong goal sapagkat ito nagtutulak sa atin para maging successful. So, why is it important? Number one, a goal is a statement of faith. It is what we see by faith. Sabi doon sa Hebrews 11:1, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Physically, we don't yet see all the new disciples that will be produced. They're not standing in front of us. Not yet. We can't see them physically. Not yet. But we see them by faith. We set the goal by faith. This increases our faith. Yun ang ating pananampalataya. So, pag nag-set tayo ng goal, ito po ay kapahayagan ng ating pananampalataya. Then faith pleases God. ang sabi po doon sa Hebrews 11:6, and without faith, it is impossible to please God. If we don't have a goal, by faith, God is not pleased. Let's please God, express our faith, set a goal. So, hindi kawalan ng pananampalataya na tayo po ay magsiset ng goal, kundi pinapalakas nito ating pananampalataya para maabot natin yung nais ipaabot sa atin ng ating Panginoon. Sample personal goals to make disciples. Number 1, I will make no new disciples within the next year. Number 2, by the grace of God, I will make 3 new disciples within the next year. Number 3, by the grace of God, I will make 60 new disciples within the next year. So, how big is your faith? Pangunahan po tayo ng ating facilitator para i-discuss po ito. Sample church goals to make disciples. Number 1, our church will make 5 new disciples within the next year. Number 2, our church will make 15 new disciples within the next year. Number 3, our church will make 100 new disciples within the next year. Pangunahan po ulit tayo ng facilitator para engage ng ating faith. Your personal goal. Ask God to speak to you. As a step of faith, we will set a personal goal of what we are trusting God to do through us within this next year as a result of our training. So, kailangan magsulat po tayo ng ating goal, personal goal. How to make your church goal. This exercise is what you will actually do in your church. You will do this after a few weeks of vision casting. You will cover how to do vision casting in your church later today. What you have today is an initial church goal. After all of your members have written their personal goals, add this all together. This will be your church goal. We will share our church goal at our training next month. So, ngayon po, pwede nyo nang i-gather yung inyong mga goal, personal goals. Pag sama-samahin, yan ang temporary church goal. Pero pagdating sa church, kukunin nyo din yung mga personal goals ng individual members. At pag sama-samahin, yan ang magiging church goal po ninyo sa taong darating. So, pangunahan po tayo uli ng ating facilitator sa paggawa po nito. Personal intimacy with God. If we are to bear fruit, it's essential that we have a very intimate personal relationship with God. As you launch into making disciples, what steps do you feel God would want you to take to strengthen this intimacy? Can you share it with your group this time? We guarantee that your number of new disciples in your church will increase by at least 50% of your current worship service attendance. If not, we will give you double your money back. Most churches grow by much more than this. So marami na po tayong experience dito. Yung mga churches na nag-implement ng program ng T4T, talagang nag-increase ang kanilang membership at dumami ang kanilang mga members at naiplant the church. Because these goals are so extremely important, We will guide you to closely monitor progress at our upcoming trainings. Everything we cover in our trainings will be to help you fulfill this goal. Yun ang pinaka-desire natin ng training na ito, ang matulungan kayo na maabot ang inyong mga goals to maximize your potential at lalo pang mag-spread ang gospel at makapagplan tayo ng marami pang mga simbahan. Okay? So, make a large poster or tarp showing your church goal to make disciples. Gawin po natin yan sa ating mga local churches. Display this in your church. This is a step of faith. Use this to cast vision. Point to it open. So, napakaganda po na yung ating church goal ay kita ng lahat para from time to time, napapaalala natin sa mga miyembro na yung goal na yon ay gustong ganapin ng Panginoon sa pamagitan ng bawat isa. So, yun po ay paraan para mag-vision casting pa rin. Then, when your church hits its goal, mag-celebrate po kayo. Lagi pong mag-celebrate every time na mahihit natin yung ating mga goal. On the next several pages, there is a complete guide you can use to help you set your church goal to make disciples. Diyan po sa inyong manual na hawak. We will not take time to cover this now. It is self-explanatory. Please use this and come prepared to our next training, ready to share your church goal to make disciples. So, gawin po natin yan. Action plan for our network. Let's make plan now so we can get started in our training. Ngayon na po tayo mag-start. So, the network will meet once per month for 9 months. Ano kaya ang pinaka magandang araw na pwede po nating iset? Halimbawa, every second Saturday or every third Tuesday. To accommodate working people, most networks meet on Saturdays. Yun po ang pinaka-the best Sabado para kahit po yung mga may trabaho ay pwede po maka-attend sa ating seminar. So, papaubayan ko po sa ating facilitator ngayon, i-set natin yung date ng month 1 training, month number 2, at yung mga susunod pang mga meetings po natin. Implementation Monitoring Guide. Minsan off track po tayo at nawawala tayo sa focus doon sa ating pagpaplant ng church. To use the monitoring guide, meron po dyan sa inyo pong books o dyan sa inyong handouts to maintain your focus and progress as you begin to lay the foundation to make disciples and multiply churches. Napakahalaga po na magamit natin ang monitoring guide. Commitment. Napakahalaga po nito dito sa ating training na gagawin. So, in our part, our commitment is we will simply and practically train you using this video, or pwede po nating gawin ito na pupuntahan kayo every month. So, we will simply and practically train you. And number 2, we will come as scheduled and provide guidance to the network. And number 3, we will avail ourselves for coaching and guidance kung kinakailangan po ninyo ang ating advice. So, pwede nyo po kaming kontakin anytime. That is our commitment. And in your part naman po, your commitment, you come with your key lay leaders from your church, and you come as scheduled on time doon sa ating training. At higit sa lahat, number 3, implement. Mag-i-implement po tayo kung ano yung natutunan natin, i-apply po natin to upang sa gayon tayo po ay makapagturo sa iba. That is your commitment. Ituro sa iba ang inyo pong natutunan habang ini-implement po ninyo ito or after nyo na ma-implement po ito. So gusto ko pong basahin yung Acts 20:24. Sabi doon sa mutual commitment natin, "However, I consider my life worth nothing to me, if only I may finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given me, the task of testifying to the gospel of God's grace." Nawa, kayo po ay maging tapat sa isa't isa sa pagpapalawak ng kaharian ng ating Panginoon. Bago po tayong maghiwa-hiwalay, ay gusto ko pong i-share sa inyo ang Word of God from Ephesians chapter 3, verse 21. Napakahalaga po ng talatang ito. Ngayon po kasi, bubuuin na natin ang ating mga obvious para maging isang iglesia. Yun po ang ating pong desire at yan ang nais nating palawakin ang gawain ng Panginoon at gagamitin niya tayo ay sa kanyang ipinangako. Bakit napakahalagang magpapatayo tayo ng mga churches o magpa-plant tayo ng mga churches sa iba't ibang dako? Dito po sa Ephesians 3, makikita po natin ang mga kasagutan. Una, luluwalhatiin ang Diyos sa pamamagitan ng iglesia. Sabi doon sa Ephesians 3:21, sa Kanya ang kaluwalhatian sa pamamagitan ng iglesia. So sa pamamagitan po ng church, maluluwalhati ang Panginoon. Kapag may bagong church, ito ang mangyayari na hindi nangyayari noon. Una, magkakaroon ng mga bagong pananambahan para luwalhatiin ng Diyos. Pag may bagong church, may worship service at maraming magpupuri at magbibigay kaluwalhatian sa Panginoon. Dahil po dyan, mas maraming magpapatugtog ng praise and worship sa kanilang mga cellphones at maraming tao magpupuri sa Panginoon. Mas luluwalhatiin ng Diyos ng mga bagong mananampalataya sa kanilang mga bagong ugali kasi binabago ng Panginoon ang kanilang mga buhay habang sila po ay nagbabasa at nag-aaral ng salita ng Panginoon. Luluwalhatiin ang Diyos ng mga bagong mananampalataya sa kanilang puso at isip bawat sandali. Kaya malulugod ang Panginoon sa mga bagong mananampalatayang ito. Pangalawa, ang kaluwalhatian ng iglesia ay magpakailanman. Sa Kanya kaluwalhatian sa pamamagitan ng iglesia, magpakailanman. Ang sabi doon sa Ephesians 3:21. Kapag may bagong iglesia, gaano katagal luluwalhatiin nila ang Diyos? 5 years? 10 years? 20 years? 100 years? Or 1,000 years? Hindi lang yan. Ang sabi po dito sa ating binasa, higit pa, ito ay magpakailanman. Kapag may bagong iglesia, ito po ang mangyayari. Ito'y magbibigay kaluwalhatian sa Panginoon, sa Diyos, magpakailan-kailan pa man. So, natutuwa ang Panginoon pagka mayroong bagong iglesyang nabubuo. Sabi nga ng Bible, isang kaluluwa lang ang maligtas at magsisi ng kanilang kasalanan, nagkakaroon ng piyesta sa langit, nagkakatuwaan sa langit dahil sa isang makasalanan nagbalik loob sa Diyos. Lalo pa kaya kung church ang mabubuo, mas higit ang kagalakan at tunay na nagbibigay tayo ng kaluwalhatian sa Panginoon at ito'y mananatili magpakailan-kailan paman. So, napakahalaga na tayo ay makapagtayo ng maraming mga iglesia, maraming mga churches. Ito ang pinakamalaking paraan para luwalhatiin natin ng Diyos at matutuloy ito, mananatili ito magpakailan-kailan paman. Kaya dito po sa tawag sa atin ng Panginoon, atas ng Panginoon, go and make disciples. Ito po sa Great Commission. The best way to fulfill the Great Commission is to do church planting. Bigyan po natin ng kaluwalhatian ng Panginoon as we obey and make disciples. Pagpalain po tayong lahat ng ating Panginoon. So, nawa ang aking panalangin, hindi po tayo magtatapos dito sa ating orientation, kundi magkakaroon tayo ng training na mga susunod pa. Month number 1 hanggang sa matapos natin sa month number 10. At tuloy-tuloy po yan na makalalaganap ang salita ng Panginoon at makakapagtanim tayo ng mga iglesia sa iba't ibang dako. At kaibigan, kamanggagawa, mapalad ka, kabilang ka sa tinawag ng Panginoon upang maging kabahagi sa gawain ito. Nawa, makasama ka ang iyong buong iglesia sa panawagan ng Panginoon na humayo at gawing alagad ang mga bansa. Tayo po'y manalangin. Panginoon, salamat po na sinamahan niyo po kami dito sa aming orientation. Dalangin ko po na nawa yung hamon ay manatiling buhay sa puso namin, ang hamon na humayo at gawing alagad ang mga bansa upang marami pang mga taong kumilala sa iyo at marami pang mga iglesia ang maitanim po namin sa iba't ibang dako. Pagpalain mo ang bawat isa at nawa patuloy mong luwalhati ng iyong pangalan sa buhay at paglilingkod po namin. Sa iyo ang pasasalamat at papuri. Ito ang aming panalangin sa pangalan ni Jesus. Amen and amen. Salamat kaibigan, kapatid, kamanggagawa. Tapos po tayo sa ating orientation sa araw na ito at nawa makasama po kayo sa mga susunod pa po nating mga training. God bless you po.